We're gonna do a movie called The Good Nurse. Strap yourself in for this shit. So the first scene we see takes place at this hospital back in like 1996. Bunch of doctors are trying to resuscitate somebody, but unfortunately the patient dies. And then we see one of the guy nurses just walking out. Fast forward 7 years later, we get to this nurse by the name of Amy, and it's at a different hospital. Amy's taking care of this couple or whatever like that. Mr. Martinez visits his wife and everything like that because his wife has been laying in the hospital. But we notice is when Amy is taking care of another patient, she's having like problems. She's having problems like catching her breath and breathing and stuff. We're like, oh shit. When she goes back to Mr. Martinez, I mean, he's saying it's late, he's about ready to leave, but then she's like, look, I'll let you stay in here, just don't tell nobody. The problem is the supervisor ends up finding out. We're like, look, I get it, you know what I'm saying? But bottom line is we can't have people staying with the patients. See, the problem is the late night shift was very understaffed or whatever like that. So they said they're going to give her some help. So she goes back home and she has like 2 little girls. Yeah, she's a single mother. But she has a babysitter by the name of Jackie that takes care of them while she's at work. Then we see in the kitchen when she's by herself, she's having like trouble breathing again. So we're like, yo, what is going on with her? And before I continue, this is based on a true story. So basically we find out she goes to the doctors the next day herself to get a checkup. Turns out she has some type of like rare heart condition and she can only she probably won't even survive for another couple months. The thing is after that certain amount of time, she's going to have a heart transplant. But the way she's working, the way she keeps going out is going to end up killing her. The thing is she needs to work 4 more months because she needs to get health insurance for her kids. But if the hospital get wind of this information, they'll have no choice but to fire her. And she don't want that shit. So she's basically putting her life on the line so she can get health insurance. So she gets to the hospital to work a late shift, and now she's got her new friend or whatever. New nurse comes in the house out. His name is Charles Cullen. We just gonna call him Charlie. Now apparently Charlie's worked at a couple of hospitals before, and we find out Charlie's actually the guy that walked out at the beginning of the movie, you know what I'm saying, back in 96. So he's been to multiple different hospitals. So basically he's automatically assigned to work with her in the same shifts, like every day, every night. So while she's getting to know Charlie, we find out from Charlie that he happened to work with a best friend at one point, this chick by the name of Lori. Then he gets this backstory about how he came to work at this hospital so he could be closer to his girls because he's got 2 girls. But his ex-girlfriend don't want nothing to do with him. But we don't know why yet. Everything's going on fine and dandy. Next day comes up, we find out that Anna Martinez died. So he basically had to tell Mr. Martinez the situation. So about 7 weeks later, they actually got detectives coming to this hospital. And we're like, for what? So they're basically about to investigate the Anna case, but they're thinking to themselves like, Anna was like 77 years old. It could have been natural causes, right? So the detectives come in there, they talk to the board of directors of the hospital and whatnot. So the hospital's happy to give them a list of medications that she was taking, but it's only a vague list that they give them. So the detectives want to be able to check out the body, but the body was given back to the family, and apparently they had it cremated already. So the police are finding out about this 7 weeks later, but the information didn't come out till about a month later. So we're like, something's lost in the translation. So later on, the board of directors having a meeting with the rest of the nurses and stuff like that, and they're going to let them know there's an ongoing investigation with a certain patient. None of the nurses know exactly what's going on just yet. But they're letting them know detectives are going to ask the nurses questions and stuff like that. But as long as the board of directors lady, Linda, is in the room while it's going on, that they can ask. Other than that, they can't say nothing without her there. So the detectives are thinking something's fishy about this shit. So one of the first people they ask is Amy. Obviously, Linda's there and the detectives are in this one room. So the detectives have the report on Anna's medications that she was taking. The staff calls Linda away for an emergency, so she's like, she'll be right back. So while she's gone, they slide Amy the information. Amy thought the chart was okay, but then she looked at it again, was like, something's off. Apparently there was insulin and dextrotroc in her system. So because she wasn't a diabetic, she shouldn't have had that in the system in the first place. So basically detectives go back to their spot and she tells them about a co-worker named Charlie who hasn't been there that long. So they go do an investigation on him, just digging through his background. Come to find out he's worked at 9 different hospitals, but none of the hospitals are saying shit. So maybe you're just thinking to yourself, it's just a code of confidentiality, but all of them are not saying nothing? Maybe they feel like they'll get the hospital in trouble if they say something, but still. So basically, Amy goes back to work, and she's got another patient that she's trying to help because they code it, and she's trying to do convulsions and stuff like that. She's trying to pump start their heart. But you can tell she's not pumping fully, and you can tell right then and there, it's like, oh shit, her heart's messing up again. So she tries to get a breather. Charlie comes over to help her out and everything like that. He actually gives her some medication to help her out, but the thing is, he stole that medication. I mean, he could refill it with a couple of things of paperwork, but bottom line is he did steal it to help her out, which is basically calming her heart down because at the same time, he's going to keep her secret to make sure she don't get fired. Keep in mind, she's got about 2 more months at this point to have a full year so she can be able to get health insurance. So there's one particular thing I forgot to mention. When Anna died, they still had the body there. They didn't remove it or anything. So Charlie's like, look, we're going to make sure everything's good with this. So we thought to ourselves then at that point, what's going on with this hospital? All right, so back up to current events. Charlie's been making sure she's good every step of the way. In fact, there's been times she ain't been able to drive home, so Charlie was able to drive her home. It got to the point where we was actually staying at the house for a little bit, and he was helping kids out with schoolwork, homework, and all stuff. On days they weren't working at the same time, he would be able to send Jackie home, and he would just watch after her kids for a little bit. Then when she gets back to the hospital, she's watching after this couple. This one lady that had head contusions and stuff like that. Lady by the name of Kelly, who's sitting next to her is her husband and a newborn baby. Now, in the point in time when Amy's helping Kelly, Charlie's back on the regular shifts working with Amy again. Couple of days go by, Amy's working with Kelly, but then she's asking her questions and she's starting to forget certain things. So it gets to a point she's checking on her, and then all of a sudden she starts coding. You know the deal. They try to revive her, and unfortunately she ended up dying. So Amy and Charlie are taking a break. They're sitting there talking. He talks about how he's not able to get around to his kids, and he's happy to just be able to help her out with her kids. And he said the reason that he can't be around his ex-girlfriend is because she told the judges or whatever like that he tried to do something to her dog. I'm like, what? Basically, she gave any type of excuse to keep him away. Meanwhile, the detectives are digging more on Charlie, and they find out the report said he couldn't be around his ex-girlfriend because apparently he was harassing her and then he slashed her tires. But for some reason, the case was dropped. So at this point, you think to yourself, is Charlie crazy? So apparently, after like another couple days, Charlie was off in the hospital somewhere. Amy comes up to another person that just coded. It was just another patient that we didn't see or whatever. So it gets to a point where Amy starts getting suspicious. Not gonna lie, this scene kind of baffled me, even though I've seen the whole movie, but this part baffled me right here. So Amy goes to this little coffee spot and she meets up with her homegirl, Lori, from a long time ago. She haven't seen her in a while. Lori says something about she's doing real good, taking care of the dogs and stuff like that. And I was like, dogs? And she talks about how she had split up with her longtime boyfriend, Paul. She never really went into detail on that, and I was like, Paul? Then she asks Lori about Charlie, and Lori took this long-ass pause. Then she tells her that she had heard rumors. She had heard rumors that when Charlie was there, people were coding like every other day. But once he left, there was probably about one person coding a month. Now, Amy's thinking to herself, that's how her hospital was before he showed up. So she's thinking to herself, it's got to be one thing for sure. Lori told her something about finding holes in IV bags. I was like, huh? Next, we see Amy running back to the hospital. I'm like, oh my God, she's running up the steps. I'm like, dude, you got a heart condition. She runs into the facility, starts checking IV bags. She ends up checking one and it has a hole in it. So basically, we found out that Charlie's been putting insulin and dioxide inside of these IV bags. And because it's a clear liquid, it's damn near impossible to detect. And depending on the person's diet, it could easily kill somebody. It could be stretched out to a couple hours, even a day or two. So she's got to go look up Charlie's records while he's working in the hospital. She does a background check on all the patients that was working with him and her. She had to dig deep through the computer to get this, and all the stuff had insulin and dioxide on the patients. Now, the detectives were trying to get information from Linda earlier. Now, they were expecting to see boxes of paperwork from like all the hospitals, but they only got like one envelope. So a lot of the stuff was missing off of Charlie's background with his patients. The one detective got pissed off at Linda, and afterwards, Linda banned the detectives from the hospital. See, the thing is with these hospitals, even if the nurses were doing wrong, none of the fallback goes to the nurses, it goes straight to the hospital. So that's the reason a lot of them don't try to give up a whole lot of information on their co-workers. So at this point, Amy's been working with the detectives on the low because she don't want anybody else knowing anything, because if the hospital knows anything, they'll find out about her heart and then she'll get fired, and you know the rest. So she's got all this paperwork that she could show the detectives. The problem is Charlie was able to put cancellations on the prescriptions. So they don't have enough proof to convict Charlie, and on top of that, they don't have a body. Because the one they originally came for was Anna, and of course she was cremated, so they obviously can't check her system for anything. So it's pretty messed up, but what they're going to have to do is go to Kelly's husband. Now, why Kelly's husband? Because they got to convince him to dig up her body because they held a regular funeral for her. They need to get a toxicology report from her body. He went with the investigation even though it was fucked up. And of course, they found insulin and the tox or whatever in their system. So with that information, somebody gave an anonymous tip to the hospital because obviously the detectives couldn't go back there and Amy couldn't tell them. So Linda and the attorney have a sit down with Charlie. And so because they can't talk to him full-fledged about the investigation part, they come with an excuse and say they have to let him go because he filled in false dates of his employment from his last job. So you know in the back of his mind, he's got to be thinking something's up with this bullshit. Nevertheless, he signs the paperwork and dips out. Now he's officially not working there no more. But turns out to be a problem for Amy and the detectives because it's like now they don't really have enough proof. And he could basically go work in another hospital and do this shit all over again. By the way, it's been about 3 months at this point. She's got about 1 more month to go before she, you know what I'm saying, can get the full year of her health insurance. So after she's finished working her shift, she comes back to the house. Here's her kids going over her homework and stuff. But when she enters the room, she sees Charlie sitting in the room. So she sends the kids upstairs. Now it's one-on-one with Amy and Charlie. Shit. This scene is so goddamn intense. If she said anything the wrong way, you could tell, like, some shit would have popped off in Charlie. So she basically tells him that she wants to spend time with the kids alone, you know what I'm saying? Work out some things, da-da-da. She said it in the calmest way possible. Then Charlie started talking about his ex-girlfriend. Then he said something about she accused him of, like, poisoning her dog. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, you don't see her the rest of the movie, but I was thinking to myself, was Charlie messing with Lori at some point in time and just lied to her and told her name was Paul? But then I thought to myself, she knew who the fuck Charlie was. But anyway, back to the main points. Basically, he obliged, he left the house or whatever like that. She still has his number or whatever like that. You make it feel like they're still friends. So it got to a point later on where Amy meets up with the detectives, right? And they wanted to call Charlie and they're basically tapping the phone. So she's going to get Charlie to meet up at a diner on like a Saturday, right? Because Charlie wanted to go on a picnic with her, you know, with the kids and stuff. So she convinced him to meet at a diner. So basically, we get to the diner. She's waiting on Charlie. The detective's on a stakeout. Charlie makes it in and sits at the diner. This is like the most tense fucking scene. He gets in there, tells her he's got a new job. He's gonna be working at a hospital in like Ellingsworth. I think it's like 30 miles away or something. And the whole point she's got him there is basically to get him to try to talk about the patients back at Parkfield where she works at. But while after the conversation's going, she starts pushing the question. And after a while, it's fucking silence. I'm like, oh shit. Then after a while, he just tells her, I gotta go, I'm gonna be late for work. I'm thinking to myself, nigga, could you imagine if he snapped on her, and on top of that, once again, she's got that heart condition. Next thing you know, he's driving off, the police end up stopping him and arresting him. The thing is, they can only contain him for 48 hours. So the detectives got Charles in a holding cell. They basically let him know about everything that he did, but he's not gonna, he's not gonna give him the satisfaction. The only thing he keeps saying is, I can't. He keeps saying it over and over again. So they basically couldn't get a confession out of him. They go to Amy, and they tell him we got no choice but to release him tomorrow. So what they decide to do is bring Amy to his holding cell. She goes in there with one of the detectives. She asks him to take off his handcuffs. Then she's like, I know you're cold. And then she puts a jacket over him. Every part about this conversation, you're thinking to yourself, this motherfucker's going to snap. Then after a long discussion, she's like, she just wants everybody to just tell the truth. She's still being a friend to him, holding his hands and stuff like that. The scene is so fucking tense, yo. And then he starts naming names of the people that he killed. He names Anna. He names Kelly. He names the dude that he killed back in 1986. It's just insane, yo. So basically, as they're taking him away, we find out Charlie confessed to about 29 killings. But considering the places he was at, it was probably up to 400. Crazy thing is, none of the hospitals were ever questioned about the shit. He is now serving 18 consecutive life sentences. He won't get out till 2,415. I'm like, what? So obviously he'll definitely be dead way before then. Last scene we see is Amy chilling in the house, staying in the house with her girls. She was able to get the heart transplant. She got a girl's health insurance and they ended up moving down to Florida. And she still works as a nurse down there. Yo, this whole thing had me fucking wildin'. I'm like, yo. I looked it up. It is actually based on a true story. The Good Nurse on Netflix. Check that shit out, please.